You're watching Pyro Media Network. Hello, Pyro Media family. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hope your experience with us is fruitful. While we are loading your experience, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button from whichever platform you're watching or listening on. And we do hope you consider hitting that subscribe or follow button so you can check out more of our amazing content. All right, let's start the show.
What's up, family? Welcome to another edition of Conversations with Clergy. I'm your boy, Dr. Donta Morrison, and I am excited to be here. I love doing these talks. I love having these dialogues, and I love having you join me for this discussion because I'm passionate about the Black church. I'm also passionate about sexual health, and marrying those two together can sometimes be a tedious job, but somebody's got to do it, and who better than your boy? So listen, just know that Conversations with Clergy is a part of the HVTN Faith-Based Initiative, otherwise the HIV Vaccine Trials Network. And the HIV Vaccine Trials Network is a phenomenal organization that does a lot of education when it comes to vaccine research, vaccine implementation, all that kind of stuff. So I know you're looking like vaccine. I know you're shaking your head and like, nah, miss me on that one. But science is important. Science helps us get a lot of stuff done. Science helps us overcome a lot of stuff. So listen, don't spit on the vaccine research and don't spit on the vaccinologists, because a lot of vaccines are the reasons why we are still here today. Also, Conversations with Clergy is partnering with Church One Ministries. Church One Ministries is in the city of Long Beach, California, and they do a phenomenal job of making sure that a lot of community resources are available. A lot of stuff is going on in the community, helping people live their best lives. Church One also provides COVID tests. So if you need a COVID test kit, reach out to Church One Ministry. What's up, Robert Wesley Branch? How you doing, man, from the great state of Maryland? Send me some crabs. Send me some crab cakes, Robert. Send me some crab cakes. I would appreciate it. Listen, today I'm excited for my guest on today. My guest is someone whom I have grown to love and admire for all the amazing work that he does. I mean, he is a recognized force nationally. I'm going to say nationally, not just in the city of Los Angeles, but his name is Gerald Garth. Gerald Garth. Look, Gerald Garth recognizes the need for structural work to address HIV in Black communities. You know, he works to shift and inform policy, advocacy, and education. He began to broaden his work beyond direct services to really reach the masses. His work addresses inequity and disparities from multiple lenses, largely structural oppression, such as implicit bias in care, racism, classism, and other types of oppression, and their impacts on the care and wellness of Black people. And as faith continues to serve as a major pillar in his life, he serves as a founding task force member for the creation, support, and ongoing observance of National Faith HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. Currently, he serves in an elder role at the Vision Church Los Angeles and continues to work to bridge faith and wellness. And then most notably, he was the lead organizer of the All Black Lives Matter protest march in Los Angeles, garnering numbers upwards of 40,000 participants. Listen, he don't just talk about it, he is about it. So please welcome to Conversations with Clergy for his first time, my friend, my brother, Gerald Garth. What's up, bro?
I'm great. Good evening. So glad to be here with you. And thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Listen, I'll make the people shine now.
I was like, who is that? That's me. Okay.
It is room for everybody at the table. Everybody at the table. I'm talking about it. So, Gerald, listen, we got a long way to go in a short time to get there. So I read your bio, and of course, I had to condense it because you've done so many great things, and not just for the LGBT community, for the Black community and people as a whole. So is there anything that I missed that you just feel is necessary and important to add to the conversation?
No, I think that was great, and not necessarily anything to miss, but just something to amplify. I mean, you mentioned it so well and the work that you do, and I just celebrate you as well. It's really looking at the layers of humanity and how we show up, and that faith is such a core part of our humanity. And so, when we look at all the approaches to how we are better, making sure that we're looking at those layers is so important.
Definitely, and I love it. And what I also most love, hey Robin, how you doing, my brother? How you doing? What I'm down there in Florida, man, I missed you, Rob. Man, I missed you. What I most love, Gerald, is that we both have a love, respect, and admiration for the Black church. And we see it as still a sustainable vehicle for movement and change within the Black community. However, we both can attest to the fact that there needs to be some growth when it comes to how we're doing the work as clergy, because we work as clergy, but also in the community. So we see the disparities firsthand. Oftentimes we see things that the saints happen to overlook because they're not leaving the four walls of the building and getting out there on the block. So I am excited about the fact that we're here having this conversation and really going to shed light on some of the disparities and then just ways to move the needle forward to bridge the gap between science and faith. So let's get into it. You ready?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Let's get it.
Here we go. So Kwame, what's the first question we got? So sexual health is important. However, the church fails to address it. Why do you think that is?
Oh, yeah. So many layers and levels to that. I mean, we talk about sexual health. At the core of that is sex. And the church historically has had a very interesting relationship to sex. And so we talk about sex and how it's been used over the years as a moral compass, as a class system, as a system of oppression. And so there's that sex piece that really has an impact on how it's not addressed. And then also you can't look at sex without looking at sexuality.
Right.
And so when we talk about human sexuality, and not even just the way people love, but the things people do with their bodies being two very different measures and markers, there's a lot of gray and what I say behind the curtain that certainly does not and has not historically allowed the institution of the church to address sexual health. And then more specifically of the Black church, it's been kind of a moray of the institution around sort of keeping certain things, unspoken or behind the curtain or, in the house. And so that's also created a culture of not being able to address sexual health in a way that's most responsive.
And one thing that, both of us, we grew up in the church and I love, we did this workshop sessions, a few months ago to try to bridge the gap between the gay and straight, Christian or whatnot. And I loved how you talked about you grew up in the church and a lot of those values and traditions still hold true. And I think one thing that we often hear from people, within the LGBTQ plus community is either it's really a fight or flight, and it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm never going back there again. It scarred me. but there are still some values that we got from the Black church that kind of still navigates our existence.
Absolutely.
Do you mind just talking about that? Because, you know, when you see Gerald, you don't know what you're going to get from day to day.
Right. You really don't.
You really don't. You see a suit and tie one day, you got a nice little chiffon some the next day. It's a lot.
Or both ends.
Right. But you also talked about when you step into the building, you know, there is still a respect you have for that space. You know, so can you just talk about that a little bit before we get to the next question?
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, you make me laugh all the time, Dr. Donta, because you're right. I mean, so much of how I have been graced to show up in the world is through this lens of unapologetic expression. And so, you know, being able to show up in that way, and a great deal of that really began with my relationship to the church. And so even as you kind of mentioned, you know, how people have had historic experiences, a great deal of what I've done and, you know, been graced to do in this season has been what I called reconciliation work or representing, you know, so that's the institution. A lot of times there have been individuals who have misrepresented God or misrepresented the principles of the church. And so much of what I've been grateful to do is represent what that looks like. And so, you mentioned, you know, values and virtues. That's something I really kind of guide myself with. A lot of times, too, there are certain principles that can be weaponized or demonized or, you know, used as control tactics. There's a certain, you know, honor and reverence and relationship that comes with the things of God. And so, you know, my own conviction, you know, allows me to show up in the space in a certain way. And, you know, I always encourage folks to lean into your own convictions in the same way. And so I like to base that in what I call virtue and value and not doctrine.
I love that. Virtue and value and not just basically who you are.
Yeah, because it adds value to me when I can show up in the house, you know, and present a certain way. It's not necessarily a yardstick or a finger wag so much as I find joy being able to, you know, worship in a certain way. And people should really find that for themselves.
And that does not negate there still is some trauma from the church that exists.
Oh, certainly.
You know? And I think that's the part that people miss about me, because they're like, well, I can't believe you still go to the church you go to and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, well, I ain't saying that I forgot about some of the experiences that happened, but I have learned how to navigate through, because it's not really about the building. It's about us internally and how we're able to navigate through certain situations, whether it's in church, out of church, whatever the case may be. So I just want to put that out there, because some folks will say, oh, well, look at these two. They made it over. You know, well, I ain't clear award, you know. I still have my own traumas that I'm still unpacking daily, whether I'm going to a traditional church or a progressive ministry is still there.
And I certainly agree. And I think so much of that is really a part of the work, you know, and finding a worship practice or self-expression practice that aligns with the whole and healed version of you. So by no means is the expectation for people to continue to operate in spaces and institutions that do not serve them. But like you said, like with me, there are elements of experience that still hold true to who we are at the core. You know, I'm really big also into, you know, honoring my lineage. You know, I come from a long line of strong women, specifically women in ministry, and they've had a certain, you know, reverence for God. And when I align myself in a certain way, it keeps me connected to them. And so there are certain things that are worth keeping and certain things that are certainly worth letting go.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Eat the meat, throw away the fat, you know.
All the way. Bones and everything. Yeah.
All right, next question, Kwame. Let's do this. Let's do this. So as clergy, how do you address sensitive issues such as sex, sexual identity, and human sexuality from a safe and spiritually healthy place?
Oh, that's good. That is rich. I think it's so key, and you mentioned it too. I think it's so great that you and we share this really unique intersection of faith and spirituality and, you know, public health and social services. And so, you know, it really like compels us to, you know, look at whole person care. That's very much a public health strategy, but it also applies in the church. And so, you know, from my experience, for so long, folks have come at their most broken, battered, and bruised to the church, and it's just like, well, just give it to God. But it's like, I need something right now. Like, I'm having a challenge right now. So how does that serve me? And so I think even looking at it through this lens of sex, sexuality, sexual identity, and so forth, looking at how are we being most responsive to folks' needs right now. I know years ago when I was first sort of activating at this intersection, I was able to, begin in church health ministries. And those health ministries are really centered in data and data that was most reflective of the church. So our health ministry prioritized heart health, breast health, and HIV. Because that's what the data shows in this house, in this neighborhood. So what it did was it really compelled faith leaders to look at sex through the lens of not only health advocacy, but advocacy in the way in which Jesus was an advocate, specifically for issues he himself did not experience or live. And so what it did was, or what it does rather, is really sort of positions faith leaders and institutions of faith to approach those elements of humanity through a lens of accountability as a faith leader.
And that's so important how you just unpack that, which was so healthy, and to let people know that there's a whole person approach that we need to use always. And I think that we have isolated all of this stuff to make my what I do in the bedroom me the whole person.
Right.
And it's like, what if I'm not doing nothing in the bedroom?
Right.
I'm still me, but that should not isolate me from having access to a system that's supposed to be designed to heal and give me the nourishment that I need.
Right. And even looking at it through the lens of a village, I often speak to a village, specifically we as Black folks. We are a village people. And so much of how we're at our, the whole version of ourselves is having access to the whole village. Right. And same is the church, So when we isolate and sever, there's multiple passages of scripture that talk about if a thing is cut off from the source, it is dead or dying.
Exactly.
And so we think about that, as faith leaders and institutions of faith, what are we doing when we isolate people and cut people off from the source?
That's the part that's the part that gets me, because one thing I also talk about too is I have seen heterophobia happen within progressive ministries. Not all, but I have seen some where when the straights come, it's like, well, what are y'all doing here? This is our safe space, but I don't want to go to a gay heaven. And I always say that I don't want to go to a heaven that's always gay. And I want to be in a diverse space where all of God's children, like we say, John 3:16, for whosoever believeth in him. Whosoever. I want to go to a whosoever heaven that's full of believers. But unfortunately, it seems like some people only want to go to heaven with the folks within their sanctuary.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, that is such a trauma response. Like you mentioned the heterophobia. I read a quote years ago that says something along the lines of, people within an oppressed group always looks for a group to oppress within itself. And so when we look at sort of the LGBTQ plus space specifically, many of us and many of our individuals in our community, have had to quite literally fight for our lives. And so when we find this space, oftentimes, even subconsciously or otherwise, there becomes this hierarchy / pecking order / sort of survival strategy that really kind of perpetuates the harm and trauma that we've seen in other institutions. So I think it is, like you said, too, such a responsibility that we are not perpetuating systems or cycles of oppression and trauma. And even too, like, we've mentioned a few times, like traditions and values and such, that we're not using those also as tools and weapons of oppression. I laugh, because I think you and me, when we were at the event you mentioned, I had on long sleeves and it was summertime. Like, I ain't seen you in long sleeves in a long time.
Right,
I was like,
you say
I was like, oh, I cover my arms in church. And you were looking like, what? I was like, that's just how I was raised, and this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
But, again, not so much using that, in that example as a weapon of saying, you got your arms out and look at you. And you find yourself, we find ways to what I call sword fight convictions. And it's like, if God told you to cover your arms, go ahead and cover your arms. But don't worry me about it, because that ain't what God told me. And we should really have that approach, too, when we look at the work more broadly.
I agree. I agree. I love that, to show the diversity of the saints, to show the diversity. And I think that's the beauty of being transparent and being honest, just honestly being honest, because we serve a God that knows all and sees all.
Certainly.
But then we try to cloak it all up when we go certain places. And then the minute we get in our car, we putting on the yin yang twins, talking about whisper.
Right. With your long sleeves on.
Yeah,
So
with your long sleeves on.
What's really going on?
You threw the tambourine in the back seat, but now it's like, come on, y'all.
Right.
God sees everything.
Right.
Be who you are. Keep it 100, and that's
keep it authentic.
That's all I'm talking about. Keep
so
it 100.
You forfeiting the movement for long sleeves, and you missed it. Yeah.
Right. I see my boy Leon over there on LinkedIn. What's up, Leon? How you doing? Yes. So we got LinkedIn tuning in. We got Facebook. We got YouTube. And I love the diversity, because my LinkedIn squad, them is my, them the ones that have the sit.
Oh yeah.
LinkedIn is like, real got it. So we see you, Leon. We love you, man. We love you.
Yeah,
we love you. Let's get one more question before we go to a commercial break. So what message do you have for those who avoid accessing sexual health services out of fear of being judged? Basically, the kids out there, or the queens out there, the kings, that's like, I'm not going to go get tested because, one, I don't know who works up in there. I don't know who's going to be sitting in the lobby next to me. And I doggone for sure don't want to be seen walking out of a sexual health clinic. What do you say to them?
I'd say, depending on what my relationship is to the person, I certainly will say, because sometimes I have to pull the children in close and just really kind of talk to them the way that's going to get through. But just more broadly, I certainly would encourage folks that you have to do what's best for you. And so when we look at making informed decisions, making decisions and aligning yourself to support that will be of best service to your whole person, you really have to prioritize. You really have to pick what's most advantageous for you. And I would dare say too, knowing that, gratefully so, while not universal across in all spaces, there is access in a way that it was not 10, even 5 years ago. So encourage folks to look at how can you connect to services that will be of best support to you. And I'm big into this as well. How can you connect to a trusted messenger or someone who you can help you along the way. Even when we talk about this faith work, so much of where we've seen such great movement through our history is when people are able to say, I can't do this alone. And even in our sexual health journeys, recognizing that you don't have to do it alone. And so one, looking at what resources and access looks like for you as an individual, and then connecting to care and support in a way that serves you. Specifically in a space that's really grounded in trust and relationship.
I love that. And we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to further add to that. Why is HIV, although stigmatized still, but nobody's running around admitting they got syphilis, chlamydia, or gonorrhea? Well, so we'll unpack that after this commercial break. So
we certainly will.
Know that you can now catch the electrifying sounds of Bulletin Flight Radio anywhere you go? Yes, you heard it right. Tune in to the high-flying beats and soaring melodies by downloading the TuneIn app on your mobile device. Just search for Bulletin Flight Radio and hit play. It's that easy. And if you have a smart device like Alexa or Google, just say, hey Google or Alexa, play Bulletin Flight Radio on TuneIn. Experience the rush of adrenaline wherever you are. Listen to Bulletin Flight Radio on TuneIn using your Alexa or Google devices. Soaring through the skies has never sounded this good. Don't miss out on the ultimate musical journey. Tune in now to Bulletin Flight Radio on TuneIn and let the music take you on an unforgettable ride. Get ready to elevate your listening experience. Brought to you by Bulletin Flight Radio.
because self-care should be luxurious. Luxe Noir.
Are you ready for enlightening conversations that transcend boundaries? Get ready for Conversations with Clergy, brought to you by the HIV Vaccine Trials Network. In partnership with the world's largest publicly funded international collaboration, the HVTN is dedicated to evaluating vaccines to prevent HIV and COVID-19. But their impact doesn't stop there. The HVTN is at the forefront of advancing vaccinology, social and behavioral sciences, statistics, immunology, and even contributing to the research on tuberculosis and COVID-19 vaccines. By supporting Conversations with Clergy, the HVTN not only brings you thought-provoking discussions, but also contributes to the global effort to combat infectious diseases. Tune in, stay informed, and be a part of the change. Conversations with Clergy, supported by the HVTN, empowering conversations, empowering lives. Join us in this journey of knowledge, understanding, and progress. Conversations with Clergy, proudly brought to you by the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, because together we can make a difference. Welcome back to the final part of Conversations with Clergy with today's guest, Elder Gerald Garth from the Vision Church, Los Angeles. But he's also, top tier guy at the Ahmad Institute. So listen, this dude puts in the work. He ain't just talking about it, he is about it. So before we went on break, we talked about what can be done to encourage people to go and get testing. Don't be scared to go and get an HIV test or an STI test because it's important. So listen, if you burn it, whatever, go get tested. Period. And let me say that I got a phone call last week, and I'm saying this because what most people don't know, a lot of folks still don't know about STDs. They still don't know. I got a call last week from a 20-something-year-old individual that said, I think I have an STD. I'm like, what do you mean you think? Well, a few weeks ago, I had something leaking from the tip, but it stopped, so I'm not sure. I'm like, okay, in your 20 years on Earth, have you ever had anything leaking from the tip? Well, no. So why'd you think that was normal? And why'd you wait 2 weeks to give me a call? And I think those kind of situations, it's like we're talking about sexual health. We ain't talking about gay sex, because there's no such thing as gay sex. It's oral, anal, vaginal, period. And I think we need to begin to have more conversations about sex and sexual health to normalize it, because people are still having these back alley situations out of fear of being judged for doing what they really want to do. But before we went to break, Gerald, I posed the question, why don't people run around talking about they got syphilis, chlamydia, and gonorrhea? Why is HIV still the ultimate, STD that just everybody feels shame about, but anybody bragging about having syphilis or gonorrhea? Yes, Robert, leaking. Drip, drip, leaking. Like a faucet that won't turn off. Like the faucet in Boys in the Hood that was dripping.
Well, to pivot. No, but I think there has just been a historic element that has been connected to HIV specifically. And then more specifically, how it's shown up in many of the communities we serve and represent. So, there was a season, rightfully so, where, HIV and the amplification of HIV and AIDS and HIV testing and so forth was just really exceptionally present. But then sort of as time evolved and generations shift, how HIV translated among, the young people of the generation started to kind of translate very differently. And so how and what HIV and AIDS look like for someone who was 20 in 1980 versus someone who was 20 in 1990 versus someone who was 20 in 2000. Has been very much a generational difference. So I think there's that piece. And then also, you know, you mentioned even with your story, there is still a lot of undereducation and miseducation around STDs and sexual health, and you know, just you know, all those pieces. And you know, I have also heard and experienced conversations with folks where you know they have just made just such ill-informed deductions. It's like, where'd you get that from? And why would you do that?
Right.
But I mean, it's such a major part of the work. And you know, you and I have been brothers on the HIV, you know, prevention and treatment side for so long, and I'm sure we could just tell stories just for the next hour.
Right.
So much of it is really steeped in kind of that space of undereducation and miseducation, but then also still shame and guilt and stigma. And then there's a great level of that I think is just heightened as it relates to being Black folks and Black men specifically. We have historically not been given many spaces to be vulnerable or to, you know, say I don't know or say I need help or say I'm afraid. There's just been so few spaces just across the board for us as Black men. And so sexual health is no different. And, you know, many of us have had to call the onus to figure it out, or, you know, don't let nobody see your sweat. All these different things that have been universal in other spaces. And sadly, so a lot of us adopt that in our physical health across the board, including sexual health.
Yeah, agreed, 100%, 100%. We're gonna take a left turn because Conversation with Clergy is about HIV and COVID-19, really focusing on vaccine awareness, vaccine knowledge, and all that. So let's talk about COVID. Let's get into the COVID conversations really quick with our last 10 minutes that we have. So I have a question regarding COVID, and we know COVID came and she twirled. She twirled, she spun, she danced,
and she gathered up the girls. Yeah.
Listen, she came and got the world together with a fierceness, 10s across the board. She did what needed to be done. So, but when it came to the church, we noticed that, of course, a lot of churches, a lot of clergy were ill-informed about COVID-19, ill-informed about vaccine awareness, and was, you know, they were telling people anti-vax, pro-vax. It was a lot of stuff when it came to vaccine uptake, even when it came to getting tested, even when it came to the legality of, no, you cannot have church. You know, you can't tell me what God said I can't do. I'm leaving these church doors open, and we're going to have super spreader events every single Sunday.
And God is on the throne. If he won't be dead, I'll be dead. Well,
and we did lose a few pastors that had that mindset. So, Kwame, if you can show the first question that I had that's related to COVID. Here we go. COVID-19 shifted the church. Many left and never returned. How did the pandemic impact your ministry or our Vision LA?
Certainly, and you are so right. Those first two sentences alone is just a thesis. But yeah, so as you noted, I'm executive elder of the Vision Church Los Angeles under the leadership of Pastor Sammy Haynes. And interestingly so, Vision LA was founded January of 2020. And so we had just opened the doors of the institution, and not 8 weeks later, they were half closed, half open, and flapping in the wind. Yeah. So one thing, and I'm grateful for Pastor Sam, is that we really had to think responsibly yet innovatively. And I think one thing that really made a difference is that Pastor Sammy is very much, committed to a whole person care. And so while, yes, we profess to be individuals of faith, we also know science is real. And as faith leaders, we have a responsibility to the health and wellness of the ministry and congregation. So saying that to say, we certainly did think innovatively in that way, but then just the communities we serve and represent, you know, young people, LGBT people, and allies, folks who have not been in church for a long time and kind of given church. There's this very much sort of, tethered kind of relationship to church anyway. And so one thing that really has centered, or we continue to center specifically around like the pandemic, and I wouldn't say post-pandemic, but following kind of the inception of it, it's really looking at how we most responsive and most responsible. Because of that, we really had to look at how has our service been centered in community and outreach and being responsive to community needs. And then recognizing that what we have been doing or might have inherited as a tradition might not serve the next version of the movement. And what are we going to do about it? So COVID-19 certainly did shine a light on that, but then separately, people's evolved relationship to institutions of faith also
And I think it also gave a lot of people a way out of church. Some people, they kind of felt forced to go based upon tradition or upbringing, or just that intergenerational connection. They were like, man, I'm coming to this church every single Sunday. I'm not growing. I'm not feeling anything anymore. I'm just here, but I got to come because my grandma need a ride on Sunday. So I got to come. So when the pandemic came and just said no, doors closed, I think a lot of people felt like, oh man, this is amazing. I cannot go to church by law. Yeah. Like legally, I cannot go back.
Yeah.
So
and then like under the shadow of that tradition piece, but that's still a great deal of, had been for many, a level of sort of guilt or shame of not going to church. And the whole idea, my mother, who's, our biggest fan still, one of our just conversational icebreaker. You went to church Sunday? Like this whole idea is like, I have to go to church so I can tell my mother I went to church when we talk on Sunday evening. So like there's, maybe not to that degree, but this whole idea is like, I can't dare say I had been to church in 2 months or 6 months. Or what does it say about me? The moral piece. And so like you said, that shift in the culture also kind of shine a light on that. It's like, well, I could watch my YouTube, I could watch my video, or I could neither of those and still have a strong connection to
it also challenged a lot of traditionalists to step outside the box and be like, yo, you got to catch up because we're moving at a rapid pace technologically to keep people engaged. And you still have the 3 deacons kneeling on the pew in the morning, Father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob,
Come before you today.
And nothing against tradition. I love tradition. However, we have to stay relevant. And Apostle Douglas just said people realize God lived outside of the building, and that shifted the approach to just church as a whole. Next question, because we got 7 minutes left. I'm watching the clock, Kwame. Don't worry, I'm watching the clock. I want to get fined. How did witnessing a swift turnaround for a vaccine affect your understanding or trust in science? Now, we both have been working in the field of HIV prevention and treatment for years, me decades. And to know that we had COVID come in and within a year we had a vaccine. But HIV has been around since the 80s, and we still sitting here like, what's going on? What's happening? So what did that do for you, having that swift turnaround?
Yeah, thank you for that. And, like you said, having been closely connected to vaccine science for years and such cure research and all those different things, that certainly added a great deal of context to sort of my experience with the vaccine. But what it did is really amplify what my advocacy looked like as well, specifically in the HIV space, because like you said, as long as I can remember, there's always been, we're working toward a cure, we're working toward a vaccine. And then, like you said, for these multiple vaccines to be sort of released in all stages of the process, it really helped not only me, but, me in a space of kind of community leadership, look at, well, how are we engaging with institutions, research institutions, vaccinologists around replicating and or, innovating in the HIV space. So, me personally, I am a big believer in science. I believe God operates through science.
Come on,
so yes. So I was not one of those ones who was just like, well, God just gonna have to crack open my chest and take it out. Like God will do that with a surgeon. I didn't have resistance to the vaccine, but what it did was help me see the possibilities and really sort of look at what does our strategies of engagement look like in other spaces.
I love that. See the possibility. A change is gonna come.
Change is gonna come.
Change is gonna come. And then Apostle Douglas just did say something that's always been on the forefront of everybody's thoughts. COVID impacted the pockets of those with power. HIV and cancer is big business. I mean, we all can agree that it's money. It's money in medicine, and we've seen all kind of documentaries, specials, movies, and whatnot. There is money in medicine, and I think that's a whole other conversation when we tie that piece into it. Like, well, how would it impact? How would a cure, impact the
business of it?
The business of it. What would happen? So that's something that I think we should really talk about on another episode. Bring some other people in to say, yo, so if we do find a cure, what's going to happen? So let's get these last questions out. Kwame, let's go. COVID is still a major health concern. In Los Angeles County, we saw a recent spike in new infections. However, amid that, mask mandates are ever-changing and confusing. How do you instruct your parishioners to be safe? You know, because we're talking about the saints of God. And you know, listen.
For God I live, for God I
die. You know, so
all right. All right.
Your words.
Okay.
So how do you, amidst all of it, and we know in LA, it's, you know, it's like a rotating wheel. You know, mask mandates are back today, but tomorrow, okay, we're good again. And it sends these confusing messages. So how do you keep your parishioners and your friends and family just safe?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we really continue to operate through this whole person informed approach to care. And so, you know, that comes with access to information, you know, access to data. One thing that we're really committed to is making sure people understand and are making informed, data-driven decisions, even in the house of God, even in the house of faith. And so that's one thing that's really important. And then also just, again, having the responsibility of recognizing the communities we serve and represent, that many of those communities are at higher risk. And so, like, we certainly see it as a responsibility to make sure that folks are connected to, you know, to testing, you know, to vaccine education, to PPE. And one thing I'm grateful for is my intersectional leadership with Ahmad as well. And so if folks want to connect to, you know, added care and service, I can personally, or we have folks who are at the church who can support folks in real time. So I certainly encourage other houses of faith to look at who are your health leaders in the ministry, and really positioning them as such. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Who are your health leaders in the ministry? And it's sad to say a lot of pastors or a lot of churches don't even know who's in the house.
That's very true.
They have no idea. They're not connected with the people in ministry that can really push this stuff forward. So, pastor, just because you don't want to sit on conversations with clergy or at the tables of these movements, there are people in your congregations that would love to be a part for the advancement of the ministry. So just do a poll, do a survey, do a risk assessment, do something, but let's make it happen.
Wave your hand if you want something.
Right.
Wave your hand, right. Touch your neighbor, ask your neighbor, do you want to be
right? And then our last question, here we go. The last question, I think this is a good one. And those who are watching, please get in the comments. Last question, you answered as well. Do you foresee HIV being cured within your lifetime? Within your lifetime?
Within my lifetime, you know, with God being my help. But I do, you know, not even, you know, being funny. You know, we've seen such advancement in treatment science and, you know, all these other spaces in the last few years, in spaces then in ways in which I would not have imagined. You know, I've been in the work now for a bit over 10 years. And like even what we've seen in these times as it relates to, you know, like we said, you know, treatment and testing regimens and such, it has been really optimistic. So I certainly know that we all have a role. And, you know, we as advocates, as faith leaders, and just community members have a role in what the cure looks like. And so I encourage folks to find your role and make it happen.
I love that. So we got Leon Maltby said, I think we can see a cure. Science has evolved so much. Yes, indeed. Robert Wesley Branch said, I do too. So I love the optimism. You know, hey, y'all, you know, we may see it. We may see it. And thanks to the workings of the HVTN or the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, they're working tirelessly to find a cure, to find a vaccine to combat HIV. So Gerald, we're down to our last 60 seconds. So this is your time to shine. I'm going to give you 15, 20 seconds. Let folks know how they can reach out to you, the work that you do at Ahmad, and also how can they come out and be a part of Vision Church Los Angeles on Sunday and Wednesday for the Purpose Driven Life series. Come on,
announcements. Listen. Donta know I get the announcements at my church, so I get excited. But no, just certainly thank you, Dr. Donta, for this great work and your team. This is amazing work. Thank you just to my brother in the work. Folks can connect with me directly at Gerald at Ahmad. That's GERALD at AMAAD.org. That's the work we're doing on VLA. Can be on social media us on all things social media at Vision Los Angeles. We're, as Dr. Donta said, every Sunday 10 a.m. at 2804 West Florence in Inglewood, California, and we're also in weekly empowerment every Wednesday at 7 p.m. So Would love to come back if you have me. I got a lot more to say, but yes, but the work continues, and it happens through great work like this. So thank you, Dr. Donta.
I love it. I love it. Those who are watching on social media know Conversations with Clergy happens every Thursday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So every Thursday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Gerald Garth will definitely be back to do a part 2 of this phenomenal conversations. Dana Dane, I see you, fam bam. I see you. So listen, thank you guys for tuning in, for checking us out, for watching Conversations with Clergy. Again, know that it is sponsored by the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, or the HVTN. To learn more about the HVTN, please visit www.hvtn.org. We're also in partnership with Church One Ministries in the wonderful city of Long Beach in the beautiful state of California. To learn more about Church One, just go to www.church-one-ministries.com. So check them both out, and I look forward to seeing you all back here next Thursday for another round of Conversations with Clergy. Until then, please be safe and have a wonderful rest of your night. Take care.
Thank you for watching Pyro Media Network. For more information, please visit pyromedianetwork.com.